Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Steve Kenyon Podcast. I'm Steve Kenyon. Two-part show coming up today. The rodeo in Redmond, Oregon this week, the High Desert Stampede. This is one of the fastest-growing young rodeos, founded in 2017 in the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. We'll talk to Denis Fast from the High Desert Stampede. And the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame held its induction ceremonies a few days ago, last week, as we're getting ready to put this show up and download it. And we'll have a chance to go back and visit with one of this year's inductees, Josh Edwards. Had a chance to visit with Josh. Remember, he was the Pickup Man of the Year in the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, picked up at the NFR a couple of times. And he also is kind of an adventurer. And we talked to him about the big horse race that he went to in 2024 called the Mongol Derby after he retired from picking up in the PRCA. And he'll tell us that story coming up as well. And that's a fun interview with Josh Edwards. So that's all coming up. And congratulations to this year's class of inductees to the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame. We'll get more on that with Josh Edwards coming up. Talk to Denis Fast in just a minute about the High Desert Stampede. You are listening to the Steve Kenyon Podcast. We'll be back and get it started in just a moment.
Hey, y'all, this is Cody Johnson. When I was starting out in music, most every radio station and venue I went to told me no. At that point, you got two options: tuck tail and quit, or buckle down and fight. Well, I'm a fighter, not a quitter. And that's why I wear Wrangler jeans and shirts. Their toughness and style are legendary. They're an iconic symbol of the West, and there's no quit in them either. Life's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And if I'm going to enjoy the ride, I'm riding in Wrangler. Wrangler, long live Cowboys. Hey, y'all, this is Cody Johnson. When I was starting out in music, most every radio station and venue I went to told me no. At that point, you got two options: tuck tail and quit, or buckle down and fight. Well, I'm a fighter, not a quitter. And that's why I wear Wrangler jeans and shirts. Their toughness and style are legendary. They're an iconic symbol of the West, and there's no quit in them either. Life's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And if I'm going to enjoy the ride, I'm riding in Wrangler. Wrangler, long live Cowboys.
Steve Kenyon Podcast is sponsored by Rodeo Life Magazine. Thank you to Rodeo Life, Everything Rodeo, by Cubit Hay Company. Find them online, cubithay.com. By M2 Ranch Jerky, m2-ranchjerky.com. True traditional cowboy jerky. Thank you to Equinity, teamequinity.com, to the Justin Boot Company, the Standard of the West since 1879, to the Grandview at Las Vegas, to Wrangler, Long Live Cowboys, to Resistol, proud sponsors of the Resistol Rookie of the Year Award. If you happen to be in Fort Worth, April 25th and 26th, you got to drop by and join us at the Cowtown Coliseum for the Resistol Rookie Roundup. The Gooding Pro Rodeo in Gooding, Idaho, the Gooding County Fair, celebrating its 100th birthday this year. Thank you to Next Gen Rodeo, of course, to the Cowboy Channel. Our featured interviews brought to you by Classic Equine and by Classic Ropes. The High Desert Stampede Rodeo is this week. It happens in Redmond, Oregon. This rodeo started in 2017, and it has quickly grown into one of the premier stops, certainly on the West Coast and around the country in the world of professional rodeo, PRC Extreme Bull Riding event, and then 3 full rodeo performances. And this year, Denis Fast with the High Desert Stampede says that the rodeos in Redmond, Sisters, and Prineville, that are only about 50 miles apart, 3 great rodeos, are teaming up to form something called the Cascade Shootout. And I asked Denis to join us to talk about everything that's happening in Redmond this week.
We start out with Extreme Bulls on Wednesday night, April 2nd, and then 3 full PRCA performances, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Awesome. The Extreme Bulls, this is the second year of the Extreme Bulls, and I thought that went really well for you last year.
It really did. Our entries are just outstanding for this year. It's really fun when you can turn away, you can't take everyone. We'd love to. But, we fill up. We've got a tremendous group of bulls coming, and we're pretty excited.
Yeah, you should be. Okay, so let me ask you, I want to talk more about your rodeo in a minute, but I know the other thing that you're really excited about is something called the Cascade Shootout, right, Denis? Tell me about that.
Well, we're starting a series with Sisters and Prineville and Redmond. We're naming it the Cascade Shootout because back in the COVID years, when there were no rodeos, no events on the West Coast, us 3 rodeos got together along with our local fairgrounds, Bridwell Pro Rodeo, and we put on a rodeo when basically people said it couldn't be done. and it was really fun. It was a collaboration between the three rodeos. Everyone worked at it, and since then, these rodeos have really got a camaraderie together. They've been working together, and we feel like we support each other. And so what we're doing is calling it the Cascade Shootout in memory of that. We're having a series between Redmond Sisters and Primeville. $10,000 to the winning individual. The high money winner that enters that and competes in all three of our rodeos gets an extra $10,000.
Are there? You say high money winner. One event, two events. Do you care? How does that all work?
We don't care.
Okay,
That's easy. We can be a multiple event person. It could be a barrel racer that wins two or three of the rodeos. It could be anyone, and so it's wide open. We have local bets going on how much that money is going to be to win that shootout series, but it's just really going to be fun and a chance to work together.
Your rodeo has increased. What your rodeo has done since 2017 when you started is amazing. The added money has increased. I'm not sure where you're at this year, Dennis, but it's gone up consistently. I know Sisters has done some big things. I talked to the guys from Sisters, and they were bragging about how how quickly tickets sold for their rodeo. I'll bet you can tell me the same story. The folks in Primeville have been there for decades and produce such a great event. It is such just a traditional, great rodeo. And you mentioned the fact that all three of you work together. And I know that's true. You can't go to the High Desert Stampede without folks from Sisters in Primeville there. You can't go to Sisters without you guys in Primeville there. You can't go to Primeville without you and Sisters there. It really has become a collaboration.
Well, it really has. We're pretty fortunate in Central Oregon. First off, we're in a 50-mile radius, and there are three large rodeos. Each have their own individual look and style, and we welcome that. But we do work together. I have conversations all the time with both rodeos, and Central Oregon has a pretty strong rodeo fan base that's pretty knowledgeable in rodeos, and they appreciate that we're working together. And the shootout's just one more thing that we decided to do together.
Yeah, and it's going to be awesome. $10,000 to first. So if you haven't already, the entries are closed because your rodeo's next week, but Sisters and Primeville are going to be open up pretty soon. So this is going to incentivize. You know what? It won't surprise me if a breakaway roper or barrel racer ends up winning it because so many numbers show up for all three events. It won't surprise me.
There's a lot of guesses, Steve, on who's going to win, and that's one of the fun of it. We like to give things back to the contestants, and this really is a way to give back, thanking them for coming to these rodeos. It's not easy to leave the Texas swing and head clear to the West Coast because basically the High Desert Stampede kicks off the West Coast in rodeo for the spring and summer.
You used to be, the second or third weekend in April, and now you're the first weekend in April. Tell me about the people behind. I used to call them the Magnificent Seven. Tell me about the people who helped to put this on, because it's a very small group of directors with a very dedicated group of volunteers, and I think it's a wonderful story about the people that produce your rodeo.
Well, it used to be the Magnificent Seven. Now I guess it's the Super Eight, but we've added another director and shareholder, adding a tremendous amount to us. But each of us are invested in making this rodeo successful. Everybody has a real role. And again, remember, we started in 2017. We're not 85 years old. We're not 100 years old. We're 2017 with COVID in the middle. And but we've learned a lot. And I think that this group of directors is doing a tremendous job. I'm just really fortunate to have such a dedicated and smart group of people that looked at the rodeo industry and how can we make it work, and we're improving all the time, and and pushing hard.
You know, every event, every rodeo, every group of people kind of take on their own character. And um, your event, you are so very, very much tied in with Tim and Haley Bridwell and Bridwell Pro Rodeos. You were the very first standalone event that they produced, if I remember right, as Bridwell Pro Rodeos, and they've been a major part of what you guys do.
Oh, we consider them our partner, 100%. Yes, in 2017, it was Bridwell's first year as Bridwell Pro Rodeos, and they have been a great addition. I love working with Tim and Haley. They bring so much and so much experience to us. I look at them for advice on all kinds of things. Um, we have a pretty cool facility for the Northwest. It's indoors, it's TV friendly, it's crowd friendly, and the openings and the way we do things is pretty innovative, and we can give a lot of credit to that to Tim and Haley.
Yeah, absolutely. Haley's great at those things. Haley is as good as she is as a rodeo secretary, the multiple-time award-winning secretary of the year. Her production ideas are outstanding. Denis, what do folks need to know over the next week? HighDesertStampede.com is the website. Talk to me about tickets. Talk to me about how much money you think you're going to pay out when all is said and done. Just kind of give me all the specifics of the High Desert Stampede.
Well, you talked about our added money. We have increased added money every single year. So right now, this year, we're at $14,000 per event, and we estimate our payoff is going to be about $220,000, $210,000. And I guess I should have put the numbers together for sure with our entries because we have them. But so that's what we're doing this year. Things are just really rolling along.
Yeah.
The tickets are selling like hotcakes. We honestly are not quite sold. We're not quite sold out for Friday and Saturday night, but it's pushing the envelope. If people want to come, they better get their tickets. And Wednesday, the Extreme Bulls is starting to take a life of its own on, and so it is really starting to go. We have some great ideas for openings, and excuse me, and who we're honoring each night. So you just have to either tune in or come to watch. But it's tickets at HighDesertStampede.com. It's pretty simple.
Denis, I know how hard you guys all work on this. You guys and ladies as well. It's not an all male board. There's one lady that keeps all you guys in line. But I'm always curious. You've busted your backside for a lot of years to put a rodeo on there in Central Oregon, and so have the folks that you work with on that board of directors. Why do you do it? Why do you work so hard at it?
Well, it's fun, but we do have two ladies on our board now. But it is fun. It's just kind of a give back to the community, it is given a real purpose for some of our directors, and people love to use their own skills to do great things. And I think my board is really doing that. They continue to impress me. At times, I feel like we don't have quite enough bandwidth to cover everything, but then it gets covered, and done covered very well.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest environments in the world is inside that building on Friday and Saturday night during the Friday and Saturday night rodeo performances because it's jam packed, it's oversold, it's a great place to be to enjoy a great rodeo. The Cascade Shootout, Denis Fast. It's a new thing. Rodeo contestants need to know $10,000 for whoever the high money winner is. Redmond, Sisters, Prineville. Good luck with all of it. I hope it works out well, and I wish you the very, very best on your rodeo next weekend.
Well, thank you, Steve, and we're looking forward to it. I think in 2 or 3 days, the buck and stock is rolling into Central Oregon. We're getting all set up. And it's going to be a fun show, and it's truly worth it when we see that electric crowd in that facility. and it just really, it's just been an exciting few years.
Yeah. Yep. Dennis, have fun with it. Enjoy yourself.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Denis Fast from the High Desert Stampede in Redmond, Oregon. You can watch the rodeo in Redmond this week. Cowboy Channel Plus app, Cowgirl Channel, and the Cowboy Channel will have both Redmond and the rodeo in San Angelo, Texas this week. So you might want to check those events out on the Cowboy Channel, Cowgirl Channel, and on the Cowboy Channel Plus app this week. Josh Edwards is one of the most well-known figures in all of pro rodeo. He's a pickup man. He is a movie stuntman. He is one of our directors in the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, and he was just inducted into the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame. The induction ceremonies happened a few days ago at Billy Bob's in Fort Worth, Texas. Josh joined in this year's class of inductees by a very prestigious group that includes Hall of Famers Byron and Mary Walker, Joe Ellard, Billy Clapper, and the Spirit of Texas Award recipient R.W. Hampton. Not long ago, Josh competed in something called the Mongol Derby in the summer of 2024. That's a 1,000-kilometer horse race through Mongolia. It is one of the, it's kind of one of those things that I don't know that you and I could imagine unless we did it, and then we'd still have trouble figuring out what we just did. I had a chance to talk to Josh when he got back, and I thought I'd go back and share that interview with you one more time. So I'm really excited about this opportunity because I've been wanting to talk to this guy ever since he got home. Josh Edwards, the 2023 Pickup Man of the Year, National Finals Rodeo Pickup Man, and just got done competing, Josh, in one of the most unique events any of us will ever hear of, be a part of, called the Mongol Derby. August 7th through 17th, 1,000-kilometer horse race. Wow. I'm not sure where to start other than to say welcome and thank for your time and welcome home. This was it everything you thought it would be? Was it more stressful? How'd you feel when you got back?
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. And yeah, I love talking about it. I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, there were some really high highs and there were some low days too. You know, that race, they kind of put it out there as the world's longest, toughest horse race. And I'm not sure if there's any longer. I guess I doubt there are at this moment. And as far as the toughness of it, I mean, there are days where you think, hell, this isn't so bad. And then there's days that you think, man, I don't know if I'm going to get through this. I average about between 85 and 90 miles a day riding. And, you know, every time you change horses, you're getting on a half wild, not, you know, sometimes half broke. If you get one half broke, you're doing well. And then, you know, you spend the first 10 miles trying to break him a little bit or keep him from running off and then navigating the rest of the way. So I think it was everything I thought it would be and in some ways more, you know.
There were, I'm thinking back to the article that I read, 44 contestants started. Did they all finish?
Well, in a way, actually 47 people came to the race. Only 44 were able to start. They had a couple of injuries and sickness before we ever got to the start line because we were out at the start camp for 2.5 days before the race actually started, kind of getting acclimated, getting prepared, going over with their medical team, kind of procedures for them. They have a team of veterinarians that are on site and move with the race to make sure the horses stay sound. So we had those kind of meetings every day and then some prep work. But yeah, 44 people started the race. And as far as the competition is concerned, 20 people finished in the competitive part of the race.
Right.
Now, the way they handle it is in order to kind of keep everyone, I'm going to say, safe, as the race progresses, where you have people that drop further and further back from the race leaders, once they're to a position where they're not really, or the organizers deem it that they're not really competitive anymore, they take them out of the race class and put them in what they call the adventure class, which means those people can still ride like leg 4 to 5, but if they're so far behind, they may advance them, like they may jump in the medic's car and advance to, say, stage 8,
Yeah.
and then let them ride again. So they don't discontinue the riding portion, but they're no longer competitive. So they don't necessarily have to go through the same things that the competitive racers have to go through at that point. So 20 people finished the race as far as competition is concerned. And then I'm not really sure. I guess I think while we were out during the race, maybe 2 or 3 more people, had to leave for, dehydration and issues like that, and then end up coming back. The one thing that I think is really interesting and neat about the organization is on the last leg, even if you're in the adventure category, if you want to, they'll let you ride the last leg of the race. So you actually do come across the finish line and get pictures and finish the race, so to speak. So, but to answer your question, 20 people finished in the race category.
You ended up tied for third. I'm probably going to mispronounce this gentleman's name, Josh Dollies of Tasmania. And you ended up tied for third, and a couple of Australian riders finished first and second. So you had to be proud of the way that you stood up and performed and handled all of this.
I really was. I was very content. For many sections of many stages, I led the race, and then had various problems. I think day 3, I don't remember what station it was. I had a horse tie up, and so I sat out in the middle of nowhere for 3 hours till the vets could come find me. You actually have a tracking GPS that you wear that also has a vet emergency or medical emergency button that you can push, and then they will send somebody to you. So I had to activate the vet emergency button one time, and while I was waiting on that to kind of transpire, I went from first to third. Once I got that managed, I caught back up and was in second place, riding with another lady. We were both second, third place. And then later on in the race, I ended up drawing a horse that he just wasn't made for the terrain that we were in. We were in the mountains, and after crossing 2 mountain passes, I mean, he just gave up on me, and so it dropped me back to third again. And that evening, Josh caught up with me just because I couldn't get the horse out of a walk. And so when everybody else is running or loping or long trotting and I'm walking, that's what it put so much distance in between myself and the race leader. I didn't have enough race left to catch up to her. And once Josh got in there, we ended up staying at station 25 together, I think. And, I was pretty down about that, just like anything, I guess, rodeo or life in general, your competitive juices kind of kick in. And at that point, I was really wanting to compete well and to win. But it was a situation that was out of my hands. And once I kind of accepted that, Josh and we had only spoken maybe once or twice at start camp, and I hadn't seen him the whole race. And the next morning, I knew at that point I couldn't catch first place, but the people behind me couldn't catch me either. There was that big a gap. Right. So I said, man, if you want to just ride the rest of this together, let's just do that and enjoy it and have fun. So that's what we decided to do.
Got it. So was it a deal, Josh, when there's so many questions. I've got a million questions that I didn't think I'd want to ask you.
Shoot, I don't mind answering them. I enjoy talking about it. It was a great experience.
So was it a deal when, okay, you get to, you take off in the morning, you get to a camp somewhere at the end of the day, and they know what order you came into that camp that night, and so if you came in first an hour ahead of the guy that was second had to wait an hour to leave the camp. How did that work?
No, so it's not like, like a stage race, like in cycling, for example, where they do, the stage starts.
Yeah.
So this is what made the race more complicated. you didn't ride all day. The stages were about 35 to 40 kilometers apiece. So you would actually go through 3 or 4 stages, 4 if you were really moving, 2 if you weren't, somewhere in there. Well, you change horses at every stage. And so the rules are you could only ride from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because mainly that's for the safety of the animals and the crew.
Right.
When you figure there's 44 people stretched out over 200 miles, and you've got crew trying to maintain horse safety and rider safety and all that kind of thing. Um, when you got into a station, you could elect to stay there if you wanted to. Like, say, the race stopped at 7. If it was 6 o'clock, you could elect to just stay there. But there was no time stamp. So if 4 people came into that station before 7 p.m., at 7 a.m., you were all starting again.
Got it.
So the only way to maintain your lead or your distance between the next rider was to ride out of camp and then stay on your own.
Got it.
That's the only way you could maintain it. So I finished in 8 days, so I stayed 7 nights basically in the race. So 4 of the nights I camped out, either would go to a family, or one night me and a couple other racers stayed in a goat shed and just made camp the best you can.
Yeah.
But that was the way you maintain the distance or increase the distance. It was kind of, what were you willing to to put yourself through to maintain that distance. A lot of people, that was out of their comfort zone, because if you were in the camp, they took care of your horse. They would have something there for you to eat. There would be water. You would sleep in a gur, so you knew that you weren't going to get rained on or anything like that. There was hand washing station, those kind of things. If you elected to keep riding, at 7 o'clock, you stopped where you were. So if I was in the middle of the open plains, that's where you camped, and you had to try to maintain your horse and get a little sleep and that kind of thing. So the best idea, which is what I always did, was along the route you would come across other gurs, other herders. They weren't necessarily associated with the race, but and I'd love to tell you more about the hospitality of the culture, but you would just ride up to their gur, and you couldn't communicate through the language, but just kind of mime, like,
right.
I need to eat and I need to sleep and I need my horse water. And once you kind of went through the charades of that for a few minutes and everybody understood what was needed, they would take you into their home and feed you and give you a place to stay and either stake out your horse or put him on a tie line or something of that nature. So that's the way you maintain the distance as you got further and further ahead of people in the races. You had to ride out and camp on your own, or you gave them an opportunity to catch up with you.
You mentioned it, so let's talk about the hospitality of the culture. What an opportunity to not just see places you had never seen and probably will never see again, but to be in a completely different environment and a completely different culture.
It was incredible to me. I've said this to a couple people, Steve, but by the end of the race was really fourth on the list. I mean, from what you realize was important, or what was important to me. It's like I said, if you can imagine, us and our culture, I would ride up, on a horse out of the middle of nowhere, right at dusk, and step off my horse, not speak the language of these people, and try to mime them that I needed food and shelter and wanted to spend the night in their house. And they would completely take you in, take care of your horse, feed you whatever you needed. In 2 of the instances, it was just a one gur family. So it was a father, mother, and maybe a child or 2. And the gurs are only about, I'm going to say, 20 to 25 feet in diameter. I mean, they're smaller than a medium-sized round pin. and the beds were lined around the edge so they could, commune in the middle. So, if they didn't have an extra bed or a place for you, the man of the household would remove his belongings off the bed and give you his bed while he slept on the floor, right there with his family. There was another family I stayed with. They had, early 20s and late teenage 3 daughters, and they put us all in the same place. And I'm just, as I'm experiencing all this, I'm thinking, would this happen anywhere in the Western culture? I mean, we're so, uh, you know, uh, we've experienced so many negative things, and our
Yeah.
culture has changed so much that we just don't have a hospitality like that anymore. We don't have a warmth and a kindness that this culture still has, because they're untainted by the negativity or the negative things that we deal with in a society. So it was really amazing to me. I mean, another family I stayed with, they had, I don't know, like 11 or 12 kids, and they were just uh, amazed that I had a cowboy hat and a buckle, and I mean, the kids were crawling all over me, and we are playing, shooting some basketball and
Huh.
just interacting with these families, and I'm a complete stranger, and we can't even communicate. We can't even speak the same language, but uh, their culture is so warm and inviting that they would just take you right in, and ultimately, I think for years to come, that will be the piece that I hold on to the most, is just how I was welcomed, and all, not just me, all the racers, but how their culture welcomes people in, and shows that kindness.
Interesting. Um, Let me ask you about horses, Josh. I am really curious how this all worked. You didn't bring any. You didn't take your old reliable pickup horses with you over to Mongolia. They provided you horses when you got there. You made a comment earlier that sometimes you got on something that was basically an unbroke colt, and you spent the first hour that you were riding. How many horses a day did you get on? How many horses did they go through? How were you when you got to your next station? Did you just step on whatever was standing there next, or how did that all work?
So the way they've set it up, I would ride 3 to 4 a day, depending on how many stations I made it through. And the way the race is organized, the organizers go out about 3 months ahead of time, and the herders, they're nomadic, and they still move from place to place. So they go and kind of set this race course up, basically where the herders are at that time. And so they um, you know get the herders to put these groups of horses together. So you figure there was 29 stations, 44 riders. What's that? Roughly 1,500 horses
Yeah.
that they had to put together for this race. So each station, had 45, 46, maybe a couple of extras to switch through. And the way it had in the years past, when you rode into the station, you would just step off and pick one off the line. I want that horse. Or what they got to realizing is it's a very large sense of pride for these herders if the person winning the race, or in the leaders of the race, are riding their animals. I mean, it's a huge sense of pride for them, because horses are revered over there, and this horse race is such a big part of their culture. So what they determined after a few years is that, by day 3, if you're in the top 5 or 6, you're drawing the best horses, and nobody else has a chance to catch up with you. So last year they changed it to a draw system.
Yeah.
So when you got into the station, you went through your vet check, cooled your horse down, unsaddled, and then they had all the horses numbered. You would draw a number out of a pot, and they would bring you that horse, and then that's how you progressed. So once they changed it to a draw, it's no different than rodeo. Sometimes you draw bad, and so Like me, for example, like I said, that day 6, about station 24, I drew a horse that, just didn't have the stamina to get through the mountains, and ended up having to walk about 15 miles. And that's what took me, back into third. And there really wasn't anything I could do about that.
Did you never got it like at station 5? You didn't get on the. There was no chance you'd get on the same horse you'd had at station 2. I mean, it was a different horse every single time, right?
Yes, sir. And it was a different set. So you would ride, 40 kilometers, and then there would be another set of horses. So you would leave that horse there, get on another one. Think Pony Express type situation. You rode, changed, rode again, changed, and so forth.
Equipment. Did they provide the saddles and all that too? Were you changing saddles every time you? How'd that work?
No, they provide you a saddle and a bridle, and you bring they'd actually provide a saddle bag, but you bring anything that you want in it that weighs, 5 kilograms or less. The saddles are basically kind of a cross between an endurance and an English riding saddle. Very lightweight, but it was only the saddle. You had to bring your stirrup leathers and your own stirrups based on what you wanted to ride. So a lot of people were polo players, endurance racers. They would bring, like the polo stirrups. I actually had Wilson Franklin over at ML Letty's. He built me a set of Western stirrup leathers with fenders, but they were very, very narrow, so they would go in the slits made for the English style saddle. So I rode, Western fenders and the stirrups that I picked up broncs in, because that's what I was comfortable with, and took them with me.
So there's I read a couple of articles about this race, and one of the articles that I read talked about just simple clothing for this race. There were certain requirements you had to meet. Resistol helped you out with a cowboy hat that is something that they designed a few years ago that is basically a helmet. You had to figure out a way to somehow stay true to your Western heritage. And your pants, they wanted you to not wear jeans. You were wearing breeches, sort of. Talk about that a little bit.
I'd love to. Resistol I've been with them for over 12 years now as an endorsee, and reached out to them, and they have what they call the Ride Safe helmet. Now, when I first signed up for this, I told the organizers, I said, well, I'm just going to wear a cowboy hat. And they said, no, because of our insurance requirements, everybody has to wear a helmet. So I reached out to Mary Jane and said, okay, I need a helmet that's a cowboy hat. She said, well, we have one. Mm-hmm. So they were very gracious and helpful, brought me in. They had a felt version and a straw version. And so just with the temperatures over there and the look of it, I elected to go with the felt version. But, we shaped it a little bit, tried to make it a little wider, look a little more cowboy. But it actually worked very well. It was very comfortable and worked out. Same thing, I reached out to Sarah Hendricks at Ariat and said, I'm entering this race, and I wanted to wear, jeans and boots. And they said, there's no way. It would tear my legs up, and I'd be, raw and rash. And so I need some equestrian clothes, which, to my naivety, I had no idea that Ariat was so huge in the equestrian apparel industry. They're the largest in the world. So they were so gracious to me. They sent me 3 or 4 boxes full of, multiple sizes and styles of breeches. And so all of my clothing, from shoes to half chaps to breeches, all of that came from Ariat and Sarah Hendricks. So
I'll be darned.
I was very appreciative of that. But the breeches that I wore, they had normal pockets like a pair of jeans, front pockets, back pockets, zipper, a button. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they just looked like skinny jeans, really. But they felt the best. And for what I hate to say vanity was involved, but I put on a couple of those pair of breeches, and I was like, there's no way I can get through this and wear these. So that pair that they sent, I said, you know what? I bet I can make these work. I mean, they felt like jeans and
Yeah.
had belt loops so I could wear my belt, my NFR buckle, and made me feel as much like me as I could.
Yeah. You made a comment to, I think, the Pro Rodeo Sports News or ProRodeo.com about trying to stay true to your Western heritage and your Western culture and your traditions while obviously adhering to the rules of the race. And I'm curious, as time went by, as a pickup man, as a guy who's been in the rodeo business for as long as you've been in the rodeo business, you are no stranger to developing relationships with guys that you are working with and guys that are competing against each other. Did you develop some of those relationships on this race?
Oh yes, sir, most definitely. I said maybe in that same interview, it was uncanny how the similarities between rodeo and this race ended up being. I mean, you take rodeo for example, whether you're a contestant, pickup man, whatever, you want to be a part of the big. You want to be elected or compete or win the big events, but at the same time, your traveling partner, your buddy, you want him to do well, also. And you see it all the time. A guy will tie a calf pretty quick and then get off his horse and go push the calf for the next
Right.
guy, or pull a rigging or pull a bull rope for your buddy. And you want to win first, but you want them to win first too. So it ended up being that same way in the race. You know, there was a girl, her name was Sarah from Pennsylvania. She's a lawyer. And she goes, this is what they call in real life is trauma bonding. She said, you're in this extreme situation. And it does build a relationship and a bond with people very quickly because, I hate to use the word suffering, but you kind of were some
Yeah.
days. I mean, you're tired and you're hot or you're cold or you're thirsty. And so, much of the race I rode by myself, but at the same time, the night I stayed in the goat shed, I was with three other racers. And it's just one of those situations where this is where we ended up. And, everybody kind of had a role. One person took care of the horses. They let them graze. One person was getting water. I was in the goat shed kind of building a wall so the horses wouldn't step on us at night. And you very quickly bond with those people. And it became I think a lot of them will be lifelong friends. Josh Dowles, who I finished the race with, we've talked 3 or 4 times. He lives in Melbourne. We're already planning a scuba diving trip down there. If he comes to Dallas, he's staying at my house, that kind of thing. So it really was relationship building, and with the crew, with the veterinarians, with the medics. I mean, everybody is in this situation where you're, 10, 14 days out on the step, eating very little and trying to get through this grueling task. And it does bond you. And I think there'll be bonds for life.
I haven't asked you about the preparation to do this. There was a weight limit of, I think you said 185 or 187 pounds. Plus you had a limit on the amount of material you could carry a backpack with you, but it could only weigh so much. They didn't want the horses to be, have to pack really heavy people and materials around. So in that limited amount of stuff you could carry with you, did you have to prepare for a lot of different potential weather issues, things like that? I mean, were you fairly confident it was going to be sunny and hot every day, or was it what was the preparation like to get ready for this thing?
No, I mean, I was studying the weather for months in advance and looking at it, and that's actually end of their rainy season. So I was told, multiple times it will rain on you during this race. And, the funny thing, they kept saying, oh, it's so hot over here. It's so hot over here. And I'm looking at the weather, and when we had our medic briefing, they were talking about make sure you're hydrated because it's so hot. And I said, okay, I'm looking at the weather. It says 83 with 80% humidity is the high. And they said, oh, yeah. And I said, that's 7:30 in the morning where I live. Like, that's beautiful weather. And then they kind of laughed. They said, well, I guess so. But if you're from Norway or Sweden or, Kazakhstan, all these other places where these racers were from, China, they don't have that same weather. And I was like, hell, this is, in this weather, I'm sitting on the porch drinking tea. Like,
Yeah.
this is when it got cool at night. So, but yes, you did. I mean, it was in the high 40s, sometimes mid 40s at night and in the mornings. Uh, wasn't like Texas where when it rains, it's still hot. When it started raining, it would drop 10 degrees, 15 degrees. So, you had to prepare for cold weather. So I had a heavier coat. Like I said, Ariat provided that. I had a rain suit for when it was raining. And then the everyday clothes that I wear or that I wore were very lightweight, but I wore long sleeves because you're exposed to the sun all day, every day at a higher altitude. So you, I really didn't know you didn't know what to expect. And obviously, we didn't get a weather report every day. So when
Yeah.
you woke up in the morning, you had to look out, out the gutter and think, all right, is it rain today? Is it, overcast? And try to dress for the day. And that's what I think another part is really important to say, Steve, is when you got dressed for the morning, you dressed for the day.
Yeah.
This wasn't a situation where you put a coat on and 2 hours into it, you just took it off and tied it around your waist. I mean, for the majority of the race, you were two hands down trying to make sure this sucker didn't buck you off or run off.
I'll be darned.
So you couldn't have a jacket flopping behind you or anything like that. And when you got in the stations, I guess you could change clothes or whatever. But if you were really racing, you didn't have that kind of time. You wanted to get in. Basically, my procedure was I went through the vet check, I refilled my water, I grabbed 2 handfuls of biscuits to make sure I didn't starve, and I drew another horse and headed out.
I'll be darned. 2 final questions, real quick, Josh, because I know you've got a couple of other things you have to get to today. Real quick, what was you mentioned a couple of times some of the other people that were competing. What was the breakdown of men and women? It sounds like there were several women that were competing too.
Actually, I actually broke that down when I got back, and the majority were women.
Really?
I think there were 30 to 32 women, 10 to 12, maybe 13 men. The majority was women, and I don't mind saying this on the air. I learned over there. I don't know what it is about, if it's a genetic thing or what it is, but women seem to have a higher level of endurance than men. I don't know if it's a weight difference or what it is, but I learned in day 3 or 4, like, those women are tough. They may not be as physically as strong, but I know when I got into the last station of the day or went to camp at night, I was exhausted, and it seemed like the girls never were. They were, well, what a fun day that was. And I'm like, shoot, all I want to do is lay down, you know, like I was really impressed and now have a different respect for the female ability to endure, I guess would be the best way to put it. But you're right. It was a majority of the racers were women, and they were strong. They were really strong in the race.
I'm curious what you retired from picking up. Your last rodeo was Fort Worth, which ends at the beginning of February in 2024. And then from talking to you 2 or 3 times about this since that time, you invested an awful lot of time in preparing for this race, physically getting ready. Now you're home. You don't have the rodeo schedule that you maintained year after year after year. I'm guessing you might still do some movie work and things like that. What's next, Josh? What, or have you thought that far ahead yet?
I've been thinking that far ahead. I don't know. You know, I think there's a part of me that craves that adventure and craves that excitement. And I got it from rodeo for so long, and it was just the right time for me to leave. And this race was, it was right in succession with that. And it was a wonderful experience. It was physically grueling and trying. It was mentally trying, emotionally trying as well. So, right now I'm already looking for that next one. I don't know if it's, the Iditarod. I don't know if it's climbing Kilimanjaro. I don't know what it is, but but it'll be something. I mean, my soul craves that. And, luckily, the people that know me and are around me, they, family, friends, they all know that there'll be another adventure. I just have to find the one that, trips my trigger. I look at things all the time and read about things, and at some point I'll read it or see it and go, that's it. And I'll start training for it. So the preparation for this, like you said, was months. Well, it was over a year for the weight loss. And then, for the last 7 weeks before the race, I rode 15 to 20 miles every morning, just long trotting down the road and to the next city and back, wearing all my gear in my pack. And I wanted to make sure that if it wasn't preparation that kept me from competing at a high level. So I tried to prepare well and keep my body in great shape and mentally, focus on what I needed to do. And so, yeah, until then, I work, and my oldest son flies, so I get to fly with him and teach him how to fly. My youngest son, he's riding saddle bronc steers, so we're going to junior rodeos, and I'm staying plenty busy with that kind of stuff, but I'm already on the lookout for that next great adventure. So if you see one that comes up you think I might be interested in, don't hesitate to send it over.
I already knew this, and I've known it for a long time. We all just learned together. Josh Edwards is a hell of a lot tougher than all the rest of us are combined. Going through this, Josh, it sounds like one of those things that until your last days, you will always remember this trip, and I'm glad you had such a wonderful opportunity, and I'm glad you had such a wonderful time. And thank you for your time, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Steve, I always enjoy visiting with you.
Thank you to Josh Edwards. It was fun and to have a chance to hear him reminisce about the Mongol Derby, and congratulations to Josh and all of this year's inductees into the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame. And thank you for listening to the Steve Kenyon Podcast. Please like and subscribe to our social media sites, and we will do this again soon. We've got some other great guests coming up. Good luck to the folks in Redmond and the High Desert Stampede. Thanks to Denis Fast for his time in Redmond, Oregon. God bless everybody. Thanks for listening. This is the Steve Kenyon Podcast.